Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. We know this is kind of a last minute deal, but we thank you for discovering us anyway. And if you're watching this in the future, we're really hoping you get something really cool out of this whole thing. This is a little different than what we normally do on the D2D Live Ask Us Anything webinars. You'll get a chance to ask some questions, but we're going to spend the first 30 minutes of this chatting with Damon. We're talking to Damon Courtney from Bookfunnel, by the way, founder of Bookfunnel, guy that makes all of that magic happen. And we're going to talk about what Bookfunnel is, just in case you don't know and you're panicking right now. Don't worry. And then the last 15 minutes, we'll be taking questions live. Feel free to drop in your questions throughout the entire broadcast. We have Alyssa is behind the scenes right now. She's going to gather up all that stuff for us, and she'll be able to help us make that a little easier so that we're not hunting pecking comments. So that said, I want to welcome Damon Courtney from Bookfunnel. Thank you, sir, for taking the time to chat with us here on, we're calling this D2D Spotlight. So
Spotlight. Okay, so we got a new thing now.
Spotlighting you.
I can see there's a little spotlight over here in the corner right above my head.
I can't wait. I want us to make like a little animated GIF of it so that it just rotates.
It rotates back like the Fox searchlights. Yeah.
I kind of look at it like it's broadcasting the big D2D 2 as if that's like the bat signal.
Right. That's you can't hardly see the D's on either side. It's just two spotlight.
So Damon, you and I have talked a million times. We talked in person even a million times. We happen to live close to each other, which is not that unusual. A lot of us live in Texas for some reason. This is a very indie publishing state.
And in Houston too. There's actually a big group of kind of Houston authors that get together every few months, and they'll do like a little brunch thing where they meet up somewhere and just whoever shows, but it's just kind of a random group of people, you know?
Yeah. I've hung out with a bunch of those folks at there's a couple of conferences here. There's RWA is big here. So now that said, I mean, your service is internationally oriented. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what Bookfunnel is and how it came to be?
Okay, so the easiest way to describe it, and what I try to tell people about Bookfunnel, is that we deliver. Well, I used to say we deliver ebooks, but now we also do audio. But the easiest way to say it is we deliver ebooks everywhere outside of the store system that you might want to deliver an ebook. So you've got your books published through Drafted Digital. You've got your books wide on Kobo, Amazon. Even if you don't have them wide, anywhere you have them published, those stores do a great job of getting the books to their readers. If your book is up on Kobo and somebody buys it, well, then obviously Kobo is going to deliver it to their app, to their reader. But there are a lot of places where you want to deliver ebooks and content outside of that store system. And that really didn't exist 5 years ago when I kind of came up with the idea for Bookfunnel. And I needed it. I was building my newsletter, and I wanted to be able to send out a free short story and say, hey, thanks for signing up for my newsletter. Here's a story that, leads into the series that I was selling. And that didn't, and everybody at the time was advising you to do that. Oh, you should give them the first book free. You should give them a short story. You should give them a novella, give them something. And yet I went and signed up for, the biggest authors at the time. And there's some of them are still the biggest authors in the indie space. And I went up and signed for their newsletters. And all of them were just, thanks for signing up. And I've attached an EPUB and a Mobi and maybe a PDF. And here you go. Here's your books. And I thought, oh, God, my mother would never be able to figure that out. And so I said that, there has to be a better way. And I looked and I looked and I looked, and there wasn't. And that's, if you look at some of the biggest engineering, some of the biggest software in the world, it all started with somebody who went, man, somebody has to have made this, right? And they go look for it. And nobody made it. I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to be the guy to make it. So I went out and built it. And that's how Bookfunnel started, was me as an indie author. I had published a fantasy trilogy, and I had a need for the service that we ended up creating.
That seems like the origin story for practically every great service that the indie author community has.
It should be the origin story. It's like because look, if I had said, hey, wow, like indie authors have a lot of money, I'm going to get into that pot and get some of that cash. That's not a very good origin story.
There's plenty of those businesses too.
Sure there are. And then most of them end up not being very good businesses. The best businesses are the ones who said, I need this. I'm an indie author and I need this. So surely if I need it, other people need it too. And I know that's, I mean, I know just from Chris and all the guys there at D2D, it was the same story. They said, you know, we need this. It did already exist, but the other existence did a terrible job of it. And so they said, we could do this better.
Exactly. I mean, I'm not going to say people did a terrible job.
Oh, no, I know.
We could do it better was just the end of that whole idea.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So you're, I mean, I remember, by the way, when you first pitched this whole idea, like you and I were sitting in a little summit in Austin, and
yeah, that was when I was still building it. It wasn't even ready to show people yet.
You didn't even have a name yet at that point.
Yeah.
So I remember being very excited about this, although it meant you kind of blew me off on another little project I wanted us to work on, but whatever. We all survived.
Yeah, we're here now. Things are great.
So I love the fact that I can set up. There's multiple pieces to this that I love and use regularly. One of them is the direct sales stuff. Can you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the original reason I built Bookfunnel was exactly what I just said. I was building my newsletter and I wanted to be able to deliver a free story when people signed up for the newsletter. So that was the core of what I built. But I mean, I think within a week of opening our doors, which was officially October of 2015. So we've been at this a little over 4 years now. And within a week of opening it up, we got our first email asking us to deliver their sales. And then we said, oh, well, we can't do that. You know, you can do it yourself. You can kind of DIY it with what we've got, but we don't want to build that. And honestly, I spent years saying we didn't really want to build that, even though we kept getting asked for it all the time. And we didn't really want to build it because I really thought that, I really felt like nobody was going to buy your books from your own website. That wasn't a thing that readers really wanted to do. And so I kept pushing it off and I kept pushing it off. And eventually I said, okay, fine, I'll build it. I'll build it just so you guys will leave me alone about it. And that was 2 years ago. And we have tons of authors now that are doing their own direct sales. So the way we built it was we don't do the sale part. So I liken us to sort of the FedEx part. We don't do the sale, we do the delivery. So you do the sale yourself, and we've integrated with 5 different platforms that you can use. So you can use PayPal and a UK company called PayHip, or you can use Shopify, which is the second largest retailer in the world after Amazon. And you do all the sales yourself, and then we step in when the actual delivery comes. The cool thing about that is we don't take a cut of those sales. We don't take a percentage of your sales. And it's one of those things that I don't really want a cut of your sales. I think that that's your money and you can do it. All I'm doing is delivering a book. And for me, it really doesn't matter if it's a free book that you're giving away or if it's one that you sold. I'm delivering the same book either way. And so the way that we set all that up was so that you could handle the sales, you handle the money, and then we'll handle the delivery part. And yeah, a lot of authors are doing it now. We have some authors who have moved their entire stores online, and several publishers that have done the same. You know, publishers that have now set up their own bookstores that they're selling directly from their store, so that a lot of their readers aren't even going to the other bookstores now. They're buying directly from the publishers.
Yeah, I'm using it in that way for a large chunk of my catalog. And it's because I wanted to be able to accommodate certain things that I can't do on the various platforms. Like if I want to do just a rush sale, for example, like for the next 24 hours, you know, I have a lot more control. I can decide that morning, go and change my prices on book, you know, I use PayPal to set mine up, but I can go change all my prices and then send them out there, and then that people can rush and buy it at that price, and I can end it at the end of the day, and I don't have to worry about lags or any of that stuff. So.
Well, what's cool is that you have I always say that, you know, we get people that email us and we're like, well, if I update my book files on Bookfunnel, how long does it take before they get pushed out? Seconds. we're very, very impatient people. Everything we do is instantaneous because I don't like waiting for anything. And so, the cool thing is we actually built, we now Flash. So we built the original, we call them delivery actions because they're not actually sales. We're not doing the sales. We're delivering the sales.
Right.
But a lot of our authors that do use the direct sales are doing what you're doing, which is they're kind of doing short flash sales and sometimes even doing box sets that they don't box up anywhere on any of the other stores. Because your audience is pretty savvy, but the way that Amazon does things, if you price it more than $10, your royalty rate is cut in half. And so for a lot of authors, it makes no sense whatsoever to box up an 8-book series and sell it, on Amazon. You're going to lose. You have to sell it at $20 to make the same that you made if you were selling it at $10.
Right.
So you can't sell a box set for $20 and take home, a decent revenue. Whereas on Bookfunnel, you can, if you're doing that direct. And the beauty is if you've built up a newsletter, if you've built up a mailing list of loyal fans, those are the people that absolutely love your books and want to buy them. So when you offer them a sweet discount, they're going to take you up on it. And we built what we call a multi-book delivery action where you can actually go and create a box set on Bookfunnel where a box set doesn't exist. Now, it doesn't mash all 8 books into one, Mobi or EPUB file. Instead, when they buy when the delivery action kicks off, it delivers 8 individual books.
Right.
So you could decide, Saturday morning, you know what? I'm going to box up that Dan Kotler box set I've been thinking about, and I'm just going to sell the first 3 books.
Look at you.
I know, right? Right?
Look at you. That's amazing.
I'm going to box up. I'm going to sell the first. It's not even a box set. I'm going to sell the first 3 books for $1 just this weekend. And so you put together a delivery action that delivers book 1, 2, and 3. You go and price it at 99 cents and send everybody the PayPal link, and boom, they buy it. Bookfunnel delivers the 3 books. And when you're done, you just delete that PayPal link, and that's it. The sale is in an instant. The sale is gone.
Right. Yeah. That's a level of control authors don't normally get. And it's not from lack of us wanting to provide that. There are certain technical limitations with our retailers and that sort of thing. So, if your goal is to do one of those like quick one-off kind of things, that is a great way to do it. So you have one of the primary uses I put Bookfunnel to, and I think most of us do, is list building. Can you talk a little bit about how that whole process works with Bookfunnel?
So, we tell people that immediately the first thing that you want to do is you want to have a lead magnet or a reader magnet, depending on how you decide to do it. But basically, it's a free thing that you're going to give away in exchange for people signing up for your newsletter. So you say, the best traffic that you can possibly get is always going to be organic traffic. So you want to put that in the back of your books. If you have 1 book out or 2 books, or even if you have a 13-book series, at the back of your book, you want to put a call to action that says, hey, sign up for my newsletter and get this free story, get this free book, get this free novella. In that case, prequel novellas work really, really well. We see a lot of authors that use those, especially if you've got a series. If you've got 8 books in a series, you can easily pitch the prequel novella like, hey, find out how the heroes first met, their first mission. And you're giving them something that they want that can also be kind of a freebie if anybody just wants to pick up a free book, but it's not nearly as exciting, right? If I'm 2 or 3 books into your series and you're offering me a prequel that tells me sort of how the story began, well, I'm already into your series. I already like your writing. And so I probably wouldn't mind signing up for your newsletter anyway. So giving me a free short story or a free story is great. And it can be a short story, novellas, and then we see some authors that just give away the first book in the series for free. Hey, sign up for my list and just get the first book for free. Because the point is, it's that funnel, right? Getting them into that funnel, and then
book funnel, if you will.
Right. And so that's I tell people that when you're first starting out, especially if you only have 1 or 2 books out, you're going to want to write whatever that reader magnet is. Figure out what it means for you. If you're writing in romance, where you're not necessarily doing a series, but you are building a world. You're building the small little town in upstate New York that where all of your characters interact. Yeah. What is a short story that you can write that comes in that takes place there that people want to read about. And that's the freebie that you're kind of offering to give away. And you put that into the back of every one of your books so that no matter which book they pick up, they're getting that offer to come into your newsletter. And that's the first way, is that, and that organic traffic is really the best traffic. Those are people that actually read a book of yours, got to the end and said, you know what, I like that author, I'd like to read more from them. Because if they get to the end and they hated your book, it's unlikely that they're going to want the free story that you're offering that offers them more of what they hate. Although I've seen people abuse themselves at a buffet. So I don't really know.
There's no reading humans.
But by and large, like, people that get to the end of the book and go, I really like that, I want to find out how the heroes first met. So those people getting onto your list, those are real readers that have already read some of your stuff. But the other way that Bookfunnel helps you build your list is through group promotions. And what that does is, Bookfunnel doesn't have its own list of readers. We don't have people that we keep or email addresses that we keep on a list so that we can promote your books for you. And that goes back to a fundamental thing back when we first built Bookfunnel, which is that your books, your readers, is what we always used to say. And the reason is because it's an indie author. I want my readers to get my book. I don't necessarily want them to then be I don't want their attention to be drifted off and go get someone else's book. I want them to get, if I'm sending them to get my freebie, I want them to get my freebie, and then I want them to go read it. And so we don't, when somebody comes to get your book on Bookfunnel, they're not also pushed other books by other authors, except where you can join in with group promos. And what that is essentially is just a bulletin board that we keep, where authors you can go and sign up. Once you sign up for Bookfunnel, you can go set notifications that say, hey, I write science fiction, I write space opera, I write fantasy, epic fantasy. If any promos, group promos show up in those genres, send them in an email to me, and you'll get a daily email that says, hey, 2 new promos were posted in epic fantasy. And you go take a look at them and say, oh, that one looks good. That one would fit my book really well. So you join in with other authors that are all in that same genre as you, and everybody works together. I share with my list, you share with your list, he shares with his list. What's great about that is that everybody on my list is there because they read epic fantasy. That's what I write. And so everybody on my list is already predisposed to like the other books, at least the genre of the books that are in this promo that I'm offering, because everybody in this promo is in epic fantasy. And you can get more general promos where it's just sort of like, everybody list a great summer read. I don't find those to be as effective as the ones that are really focused on genres. So if I'm writing in space opera and getting everybody else, they also write in space opera, then I know when I send it to my list that everybody on my list who loves space opera, which is the majority of them because they joined my list for space opera, they're going to like these 30 books that I'm offering up. And so then they click through and they might go, oh, this book looks really good. I'll sign up for that newsletter and grab that free copy of the book. And you will very quickly build a newsletter that way through Bookfunnel. When you're joining group promos with other authors, it's not unheard of to add 800 or 1,000 people a month. Now, what I tell people is those are leads. Those are not readers who have read your books and love your stuff, but they are a great lead. People who were interested, they looked at your book cover, because when you go to the group promo, the first thing you see is the book cover. So they liked your cover enough that they clicked on it. Once they click your book cover, they see your book description, your tagline. We tell people that you should have a really strong, compelling tagline. They see that hook and they go, oh, this does look interesting. I think I would like this book. So they got through all those steps, and then they gave up their email address to sign up, meaning they liked it enough that they wanted to pick up a copy of it. But now it's your job as the author to get them to read it and hopefully turn them into a super fan, somebody who has now read your stuff and wants to go and devour everything else you've got in your back catalog, or if they're in a series, everything else in the rest of that series.
Yeah. Sorry for coughing in everyone's ear, by the way. I thought I'd hit my mute button. That's what happens when you have a mute button. So
this is live, people. We're live.
This is live. This is how you know it's live. I coughed in your ear. So the promotions are something that is underutilized by me right now, unfortunately. And so I don't have any reputation, but I love that you built that little feature in. Yeah. I am doing some now, but how does the whole reputation thing work when it comes to that?
So the reputation thing started because we saw promoters and promoters are always able to see the statistics behind a promo. So how many claims, how many copies were claimed of everybody's books, which is kind of interesting. You can kind of see, like, wow, if you really look through the book covers, you can start to see an example of what book covers are really moving readers. Promoters also were able to see how many times each individual author shared that promotion. And the goal of group promos is everybody works together. I share with my list, you share with your list, and we are all working together to help build each other's lists. We all have readers who love books, who love the books that we're writing, and we're all writing in the same genre. So, hey, my readers are going to like your stuff.
Yeah.
And so everybody shares. Well, not everybody shared. And that was we would get complaints. And I try to make clear to all of our authors that if you have a question, if you have a feature request, if you have an idea, send us an email. We read those. We read every single email that we get, and we take all those ideas and we kind of crunch them together and say, okay, what are people asking for? And ultimately what they were asking for was, I don't want people in my promos that are not going to share with everybody else. This stuff, they feel like they're just scamming readers off of everybody else, but they're not doing their part. So the reputations came about because of that. And it's really simple. It's the reputation shows how many promos you've been in, and then the average number of shares for all those promos that you've been in. Mm-hmm. And most promoters are not looking for a specific high number, like, oh, you have to have at least 300 shares per promo to get into my stuff. More of them are looking to just make sure that you are sharing, that you haven't been in 15 promos and you have 0 shares.
Right.
That means that you're just here to scam readers off everybody else, and you're not doing your part to help everybody. And that's where the reputation came about. And I will say that the reception has been really, really good, because that's the biggest fear is the author comes in and says, I have a list of 3,000 people. They're loyal readers. They really like space opera, but I don't want to give them to somebody else who's not doing their part, who's not sharing back with me.
Right. Right. That's and I've seen lots of different promo services, and I've seen things similar to that in a couple, but for the most part, I never seen anything like that. So that's very cool. I mean, you're looking out for both author and reader through this thing, really.
Yeah,
that's very cool. So you've got like list integration built in. So I have a 2-part question for you, really. I mean, so what are some of the services that you are integrated with, and what do you do to make sure everything is compliant with the various spam laws?
So we are currently integrated with God, let me think of them all now: Aweber, ActiveCampaign, ConvertKit, MailChimp, MailerLite, GetResponse, author email.
That's
Mad Mimi, so we haven't announced GetResponse and Mad Mimi. So I'm kind of announcing it here. This is kind of what we were talking about before the show, which is with everything going on in the world right now, we have new features that we're sort of holding on the back burner because it just seems kind of, I don't know, a little tone deaf to come out and say, hey, we've got this great, powerful new feature while there's really horrible things going on. So, but if people have been emailing us and saying, hey, do you guys integrate with Mad Mimi? We say, yes, we can turn that on for you. We haven't officially announced that yet. Right. Oh, and then Sendy, which is more of a DIY kind of author solution. And then SendFox, who is kind of the newest player on the market, but they have a really, really good deal going on right now. And so, and we added Sendy and SendFox and author email because we got requests for them all the time, but also because authors were everybody's trying to save a little bit of money. And those 3 services were specifically targeting sort of the more budget conscious author. Like, hey, you can have up to 20,000 people on your list, and we're not going to charge you crazy amounts of money. When you hit, if you hit 15,000 people on MailerLite or MailChimp, you're paying $150 a month. Like it's a lot of money. That's per month, not per year. You're paying a lot. Your entire Bookfunnel account with integration is $150 a year. That's it. And so we integrate with all those services. And what we do is if you're using our landing pages to collect the email addresses, we comply with all of the GDPR. And now California has their new law, which is very similar to GDPR. And really the main crux of all of those laws is basically just don't do shady stuff. Don't be crappy with people's email addresses. If they've given you their email address, don't go and sell that to somebody else. Don't give that list to your author friend. Oh, here, you can have a copy of all my email addresses since you're just starting out. Don't do that. First of all, it's illegal now. And second of all, it's just crappy. Don't treat your readers that way. Think of how you would want to be treated as a reader. And so we have things on our landing pages that make sure that we comply with all the laws. We store all the necessary data, like their IP address and their country, the country of origin, and the things that we need to make sure that we are compliant with those laws. And we have to store that stuff for like 10 years. And even after you have deleted your account, I still have to keep all those records stored somewhere,
right.
In case that it ever comes back on us that a reader says, I never signed up for this, and you put me on a list illegally. No, we didn't. I've got the proof over here, right here, where you signed up. So we keep track of all that data for you.
Do you provide that to authors at all if they need it?
If you go to any of your landing pages, any of your giveaways on Bookfunnel, you can export the CSV, and it will tell you all of that necessary data when they signed up, whether they confirmed that they did, whether they confirmed their email address so that we check to make sure their email address was valid, and then whether they consented to join your list or not. And some of them you can set up a page on Bookfunnel that says consent is optional. So I'll give you the free book, whether you want to join my list or not. Here, just take it. It's a free story. But if you'd like to join my list, check this little box and you can join. The export from Bookfunnel will tell you whether they consented to be emailed to or not. And if they didn't, then you don't email to them. But yeah, we keep track of all of that.
I mean, that brings up something we haven't, I don't think we've necessarily talked about this, but there are multiple ways to use that feature. Like I use it for my street team, beta readers, or ARC readers for some people might call them. And so that delivers the free book with no real obligation, but you have safeguards built into stuff like this, right?
Yeah. So we have what's called, if you're on an integrated account, so you're integrated with one of those, I think 12 email providers that we now work with. If you're integrated with any of those, you can create what is called a restricted page, where you can say, I want to create a page that is restricted to only the people who are on this list of mine.
Yeah.
And so then you can go and say, here's my ARC team list. I want to restrict this page to people that are on my ARC team.
Yeah.
And then when you send out that link, you send it to everybody on your ARC team, but then somebody on your ARC team decides, you know what, I think I'll share this with my buddy. Right. And so they send them the link. Well, they need to have their email address, and we have to confirm their email address and confirm that it's actually on your list before we give them the book. And we have the same thing. We have an integration there with Patreon that does the same thing. We have authors that have set up their Patreons, and as they give out their rewards, they send out the link that is restricted to not just Patreon, but Patreon of a particular level. So you can do reward levels, and you can say, okay, everybody that's reward level 3 or above gets this free short story that I send out every month. So when they get their link, it says, oh, here, I need you to just type in your email address. We go to Patreon, they log in with their Patreon, and we confirm that, yes, you are a patron of Kevin Tomlinson. You are following him at level 3 or above. And then we say, okay, great, here's the story that you get this month. So yeah, we have a lot of safeguards in place for that kind of stuff.
I mean, I always think I'm an expert user, Damon. And then every time I talk to you or every time I log into the thing, there's like 10 more features I didn't even know existed.
Yeah, I always say we're really bad at telling people about. I mean, we announce when we have new features out, but it's like we announce it once and then we kind of move on to the next thing. We call them feature grenades. We just sort of throw them at you and then run the other direction. And so oftentimes people go, hey, it'd be really great if Bookfunnel could integrate with, SendFox. Yeah. We announced that 2 weeks ago. It's already out there. They go, oh, I didn't even know.
That's why you do things like this, though.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've got 2 minutes before we start opening up to questions. And I really just want to know what you think the best way you would sum things up, like the best use or feature or the best reason to be a part of Bookfunnel. What would you sum that up as?
So right now, I would say just with everything going on in the world, what you should really be looking at is getting, especially if you're just starting, because I know a lot of authors are looking at the climate and the environment of the world and saying, okay, well, I'm stuck at home for the next couple of weeks, maybe with your kids, maybe not. I'm stuck with my kids. They're currently upstairs and being very quiet, actually. If you're stuck at home for the next couple of weeks, try to get some of that writing done. I meet so many authors at conferences that they're not working as full-time writers. They're working to get there. And so they're writing in their free time. They're writing when they get home. They're writing on the bus. They're doing that writing, but now they're stuck at home for a couple of weeks with nothing but time on their hands. And a lot of them are kind of cranking up and saying, okay, I'm going to make a real push. Let's see what it would be like for the next few weeks to be a full-time writer.
Right.
And if you're doing that, I would say if you've already got one book out, if you've already got a couple of books out and you haven't set up a newsletter, start doing that now. Start trying to get people onto that newsletter now. And if you haven't written a lead magnet, it can be a short story, 2,000 or 3,000 words. It can be a novella if you've got that in you. Something that you can write in just a day or two. Even if you're slow, you can write a short story in a day or two and then offer that up, get on Bookfunnel and start building that newsletter. And you can, Bookfunnel's cheapest account is $20 a year. You can start at that level and start building up that audience, even at a very, very low cost.
Excellent. All right. Well, we're now at the last 15 minutes of the broadcast, so we're going to open things up for some questions. And I just know we have thousands of questions, but we're going to narrow them down to a few. So Victoria asks, do you work with GoDaddy?
No, and GoDaddy doesn't have an API that we can actually work with. So the way that Bookfunnel integrates its service is we reach out to we look at the services because we get these emails all the time. You wouldn't believe how many mailing services I've never ever heard of that we get emails for. So we do try to add integrations pretty regularly when we get requests for them. But the number one thing we do is we reach out, we Google it. I Google it and go, okay, do they have an API that will let us push subscribers into their platform? And GoDaddy doesn't have that kind of API. They have the email service and they actually do a really good job of it, but they don't have the ability for us to push readers in from the back end. So it's not something we can do.
Juanita May asked, I was actually thinking about this question earlier, so I'm glad she asked this. Let me get to, I've never used Bookfunnel. I don't really do Facebook ads. I have about 40 to 50,000 in my newsletter. I'm curious about how Bookfunnel could be effective for me.
So hey, Juanita, I would say that the best thing that you can do, so first of all, if you have a huge list like that, that's amazing. That's awesome. I assume that with a list like that you're probably already talking to them regularly, which is the number one thing that I see authors making the mistake about is as they're building their newsletter, they're not actually communicating with the readers that they now have on their list. And what I tell those authors is if you don't really know what to say, you should be sending out the occasional free short story. Send them something that is new that they can read from you. I don't know how quickly you're publishing books. If you're one of those authors who's cranking out a book a month, then you probably don't need to do anything like that. Your readers are already trained to expect new content from you all the time. But for somebody who has a list that large, I would say if your books are already out there, you should really be looking at direct sales that we talked about before. So if you have your books wide, or if you have books that you want to sell directly to your readers with a list that huge, you could get a lot of sales directly from the readers that you already have. And if they're on your list, they probably already love your stuff and they want to get more content from you. We had an author back at the early part of last year who took an 8-book box set and boxed them up and sold them for $15 only to his newsletter. Now, it was a backlist that he finished publishing in 2016. So we're talking about books that were backlist, but so many of the readers that were on his list were added in the last 3 years and had never actually read that first series that he published. So he took, but they were all in the same genres that he still wrote in. So everybody on his list was already interested in his genre. He took that 8-book box set and boxed it up and offered it for $15 to his readers. Now, that's enticing for several reasons. One, many of his readers had never read that first series, but they like his writing. So, hey, I'm excited to hear about that. 2, it's a great discount. All the books are on sale on Amazon for $5 a piece. So that's $40 if you buy all 8 books individually. And 3, I forgot where I was going. 3 was that it was a complete series. So readers absolutely love complete series. They love knowing, they want you to write more than 3 books. They want you to write 5, 6, 8 books in a series, but they love to know when a series is over. And it's really, really enticing if you can say, I'm selling you the whole series, soup to nuts. From the minute you start reading book 1 to the end of this box set, you get the whole story for $15. And he made a lot of money selling that box set. And he didn't box it up anywhere else. He didn't sell it on Amazon. He didn't put it up on Kobo. That box set was only exclusive to his newsletter. So that was a way that you can effectively use. And he had about the same number of people, 40, 50,000 people on his newsletter, which is huge. the great thing about selling a $15 box set or a $20 box set directly is that on a $20 box set, you make $19.10 on every sale. So you take home the vast majority of the money.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things. Okay, so this guy, he seems a little familiar. Mark Leslie Lefebvre. He's asking.
He's very handsome.
He is very handsome. Look at that profile. Yeah, he's about to crush that iPhone.
Yeah.
What are some of the cool features of Bookfunnel that authors either aren't aware of or aren't taking full advantage of?
I would say so we just at the end of last year we added an audio feature that lets authors send out up to 2 hours of audio. So we don't have full audio books yet. That's sort of the next phase. But the first piece was letting authors send out short form audio. And since we've launched that, the authors who are really into audio have started actually building entirely separate newsletters just based on their audio. So if you're already into audio, you should look into that. You can send up to 2 hours, which is about 18,000 words. So a good size novella that you can send out in short form audio, and Bookfunnel will handle all the delivery of that. Some of the other cool things, direct sales, we actually have a lot of authors that are doing it and more that are adding on every month. So, to one of those, talking earlier about features that I don't think that are going to be that big. Listen to your customers, don't necessarily, and listen to you as an author, listen to your readers. Yeah. That's a lesson that we've definitely learned in the last 4 years, is that sometimes we don't know everything. Yeah. And so direct sales, more and more authors are taking advantage of. We have, one of my favorite features is one called print codes, which is basically lets you create individual unique codes against your book that you can then give out to people. And we call them print codes because we were trying to reduce confusion. You can print them out and put them onto business cards or postcards or bookmarks and things like that, and then hand them out at conferences. I have authors that carry that put print codes on the back of their business cards, and anytime they meet somebody and they start chatting them up, they'll hand them their card, and on the back it has a little code that they can go to Bookfunnel and get that code redeemed. Yeah. And once they redeem it, that's it. The code is dead. It's a one-time use code that authors can hand out to readers. Mm-hmm. And the great thing about that is that when you meet somebody live and in person and you start talking over books and you start bonding over books, they're far more likely to go and get that copy and then actually go and read the book. And hopefully, assuming that you're giving away the first book in a series, they're going to read that book and then immediately jump on and go, I'm going to buy the rest of that. I know that when I finish a series, I'm not looking for another book to read. I'm looking for the next author's catalog that I can devour. And so, because once I find an author I love, as long as they're writing in my genre, I'll read everything that they've got in that genre. So if I get book one and I'm into it, I'm going to end up getting the entire series. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, print codes is one of those. It's one of those ones that I built. Again, we were requesting it. They would go to conferences. They were doing live. They were doing live things in bookstores, and they wanted to be able to hand out. I mean, they were already selling copies of their books, and they don't want to give those out for free because if you're doing a signing at a bookstore, obviously you're there to sell books. But they wanted to slip a bookmark in that had a free short story or had something else to say thank you. I really appreciate you coming in, and readers love that. Readers will. Yeah. The thing I always tell authors is that no reader will ever be mad because you gave them more stories, right? Because you gave them more of your writing. If they've already reached the point where they love your stuff, they always want to read more from you. When I was growing up as a kid, I would go, so I grew up reading epic fantasy, space opera, stuff like that. And the biggest fantasy publisher at the time, they would put out a few anthologies every year that were short stories of various characters and things from the worlds that I read in. And I would go to the store and I would buy that whole anthology just to get that one short story. What happened to that character in that little short story, even though that was it. And then sometimes I may read the other short stories, but I love those characters in that world so much that I buy the whole book just to get that one short story. Yeah.
I mean, there are authors, like I would buy a box of cereal if they wrote something on the back of it.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Yeah. And that's an interesting question, by the way. Do you think that authors follow, do you think readers follow authors or follow genre?
I think they probably follow genre first, and then they follow authors. I'm a fantasy reader, so we have little dalliances with science fiction. If they always put them science fiction / fantasy.
Yeah.
But and they will have some crossover, but most readers that I know are really one or the other. You know, you
Yeah.
tend to be very fantasy, and then I read a little bit of space opera, or you might tend to be really science fiction, and I read a little bit of fantasy. So for me, when I go looking for a new book, so I finish up a series, the first thing I'll do is see if any more authors, if that author has any more books that I can read, because now I'm falling in love with that author's writing and I want more books in that world or in the same genre. If that's not new, then I'll go start browsing sort of just general epic fantasy, and I'm looking for the next book, the next series that I want to read. I almost exclusively read series. I don't read standalones because I get to the end of the book and I go, wow, that was great. But what happened next? I want more of those characters. I want more of this world, and there isn't any more to read. Once I find an author, though, I follow that author religiously. Like if I find one that I truly love, I want to know everything you're publishing.
And that I think is where things tie in with Bookfunnel, because it's a chance to follow the author and follow everything the author's producing. So,
and I do think that readers will go. We get readers that will sign up because they just want a free book and they want to experience that. And so they might be looking at a cozy mystery promo, and they look at the covers and they go, "Oh, this one looks really good. I'll grab that book." And this one looks really good, and I'll grab that book. And by and large, they may end up signing up for 5 or 6 different books. And they're not going to end up staying on every one of those authors' newsletters. But hopefully you make your book compelling and you make your newsletter compelling with an autoresponder sequence that says with an autoresponder sequence that says, "Hey, thank you so much for joining. I hope that you really enjoy my book. It's one of my favorites, yada, yada, yada," and get them to read it. And then once they start reading it, hopefully they're going to go then and get your back catalog. And now I want to stay on your newsletter because I want to know when you have new books out.
Yeah. So we have this question from Mark, and then I have one last question. So
okay.
We got like 4 minutes. So can you talk about the great tech support that Bookfunnel offers? I'm sorry, this is not Mark. This is Stark Publishing. They look very similar.
He looks like that beefy guy with the iPhone. Yeah. So I always our support is absolutely the best thing that you get for your money when you buy Bookfunnel, when you sign up for Bookfunnel, because our support team is amazing. We're here every single day of the year, even on Christmas, answering readers who have trouble. If a reader has trouble, and I will say it tends to skew a little older. So if you're writing in a genre like cozy mysteries, if you're writing in romance that tends to skew to older readers, they struggle with some technology. And so we are there all the time to help them if they have trouble with that. And, you know, it's cheesy. We're all in Texas, and they say we have tech support rather than tech. Yeah, I know it's lame. But the truth is, like, we train our people not just to be technically competent, but also to be extremely empathetic and caring. You know, this is not some, you know, little your grandmother. This is somebody that you're trying to help, and they're struggling to get the book, and they need help. So we are there to help.
Yeah.
And then one last question.
Well, I was going to ask and then we need to keep this one real quick, but is your service oriented only towards indie authors, or can it be used by any author?
It can be used by any author. I've done several RWA meetups here in Houston, and then I drove to one in Austin where, you know, RWA is a really good mix of traditionally published authors and then indie authors, and then some hybrid people that are kind of floating between them. What I tell the TradPub authors is, especially so a lot of times for the traditionally published authors, the publisher owns their works, but they are still allowed, usually in their contract, to publish shorter works in the same worlds or with the same characters.
Right.
And so even, you know, these days, traditional publishing doesn't help you quite as much as they used to. So they're going to do some marketing. They're going to do a little bit of effort behind your book, but it's still kind of on you as the author to push that work forward. So you should still be you should be looking at what the indies are doing that are killing it and saying, okay, I need to build my newsletter. I need to talk directly to my readers. Because I read Tor Publishing, which is a lot of books from Tor, which is a fantasy science fiction publisher. And in every book that I read, Tor is pushing Tor's newsletter. They're not pushing the author's newsletter. So it's up to you as the author. You still have to be pushing that message that, here, join my newsletter. Here's a novella that I wrote with these characters that you love. And if you have permission in your contracts to do that, you should still be doing that. You should still be going out there writing this ancillary extra exclusive material that you can, oh, listen, I know that you love my books, but you can only get these stories if you sign up for my newsletter, that kind of stuff.
And speaking of signing up for things, where do people sign up? Because now I know they're just throwing their money at you at the screen. So where do people sign up to start using Bookfunnel?
Bookfunnel.com. We try not to be very tricky about it.
Look, that matches exactly the thing that popped on the screen.
I'm glad we talked about that beforehand. That could have been embarrassing.
Yeah. All right. Well, so everybody tuning in, here we are at the end of the broadcast. We're so happy you tuned in and sang along with us. If you're watching this in the future, you can find this kind of content plus a whole lot more if you subscribe to us on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/draft2digital, I believe. But you can find, of course, Damon and Bookfunnel at bookfunnel.com. Thanks so much for being a part of this. And we'll see you tomorrow for another one of these guys at noon Central. So tune in.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay.